Jackie.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Old reliable. You always come up with one.
I don't want to waste time. Your time is so limited. I don't want to wait until the end. I'll go ahead. You rarely talk about spirit. What is spirit? If spirit means the opposite of anything physical, it does not seem to make good sense to me. Do humans have spirits? If so, how is it different from souls? Is there such a thing called spirit of evil, spirit of lies, spirit of murder, etc.? If so, is it related to exorcism? Is there a demon? Is demon a spirit or something else? Is there something called spiritual battle? What is the spirit of God? Can the spirit of God dwell in humans? Finished. Thank you.
That's 20 questions.
Yeah, we use the word rather carelessly, and for many, many different meanings. The precise meaning, as far as the physical world is concerned, the spiritual is the intangible part of the physical universe. The metaphysical. If it's not something you can touch or measure or see, we call it spiritual. It's not really otherworldly, it's all part of nature, but there's the visible, tangible part of nature, and there's the untouchable part of nature. Like emotions. What are emotions? They're not physical. So every emotion is a spirit. In the spirit of kindness, you do kindness. In the spirit of justice, you pursue justice. That's spiritual as compared to physical. Then there's spiritual that we use as a religious word. Spiritual like belief in God, trust in God. They're not instinctive emotions. So spiritual in relation to God is more than just the untouchable part of nature. That is a little bit above nature. So anything relating to the Creator is a little more than creation. So here's how we have to think about it. There is God, then there's heaven, and then there's earth. God created heaven and earth. Heaven means those created things that you can't touch or weigh or measure. But it's part of creation. The heavenly part of creation. And that includes demons and angels. Angels are spirits, positive spirits. Demons are negative spirits. But they're all part of creation. And that's why you're not allowed to worship a demon, you're not allowed to worship an angel. Because it's all part of creation, not part of the Creator. But then we use the word spiritual to refer to things that involve God, our relationship with God. That's a very different reality. So anything relating to Creator should really be called godliness, not spiritual. Any human function that is not relating to God is spiritual. A person is psychic. What is that? It's a spiritual capacity. Just like thinking is a spiritual function. It has nothing to do with God. You may be thinking about other gods. You may be thinking just about yourself. But thought is an intangible. In that sense, sound is not so intangible. You can't feel it with your hands, but you can feel it with your ears. Compared to action, sound is a little spiritual, not quite as tangible, but all of that is creation. So heaven is not any closer to God than earth. It's just two parts of creation. So when you go from spiritual to godly, that is an infinite leap. Just like if you go from the physical to godly, from creation to creator. That is a miraculous jump. So it depends, you have to be specific. When you use the word spiritual, you have to be specific. Are you talking religious spiritual or human spiritual or natural? Is it about creation or is it about creator? And if it is about creator, in Hebrew, we don't use spiritual. We use the word godly. So there's the godly, the spiritual, the physical. The most holy, the most, of course, is godly. The most significant is the physical, that has the capacity for godliness. The spiritual is like heaven. What do we do with heaven? What do we do with it? God created heaven. Well, thank you very much. I don't see why that's relevant, The main thing is to bring godly to the physical. The spiritual is just a stepping stone. So it's a little misleading when people are inspired and they decide to become spiritual. No, that's neither here nor there. Spiritual could be a big waste of time. And there were very spiritual people who were evil. They were psychic, they could perform miracles, they could do all sorts of amazing things, but they were evil people.
So, excuse me, Reb. So actually, the heavenly and the physical is more related to each other than to the godly. That's interesting.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because often people would consider heavenly to be part of the godly, and like this, the physical is separated from those two, but actually it's the opposite.
Right, and that can lead to a bit of idolatry. Heaven becomes worshipful.
Yeah, or
worthy
spirits.
of worship.
People worship spirits and stuff like that because they think it's some divine thing, but it's not. It's actually not different from us.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So if someone can read your mind, if someone can predict the future, if someone can change nature, that has nothing to do with godliness. It could be evil. Evil people can do these things. They just happen to have a very strong spirit. So their invisible, intangible energies are powerful. So is it possible to move an object with your mind? I suppose so. And if you can do that, you deserve to be worshipped or hired for the circus.
Well, thank you very much.
If you're godly, you wouldn't need to move something with your mind, logically.
It's an impressive ability, but what does it have to do with godliness?
I have a question. Do heavenly beings the ability to connect with physical beings?
Do the spiritual beings have ability to connect to the physical?
Yes.
Yes, there is an interaction because they're both part of creation. So the physical can influence the spiritual, the spiritual can influence the physical. Pretty much like Einstein's energy and mass. Energy is the spiritual part, mass is the tangible part. Turns out that mass is made up of a dense spiritual.
And anybody can connect with anybody?
Oh, no. No, you need some talent for that.
No, I mean, do these beings who connect, do they know each other, have some kind of a previous connections in the past, and that's why?
Yeah. See, it's a busy world up there in the spiritual. Souls, spirits, angels coming, going, moving, interacting. It's a busy place. We're barely aware of it. Once in a while we get a little glimpse of it. But there's a whole world with its rules and its regulations. An angel can only perform one mission at a time. It has its rules because it's created. It's finite. So it can only do certain things. Impressive things, but it also has rules. It can't do anything it wants. It's not the creator. So, for example, the human soul is a spiritual entity. The godly soul is a godly entity. They are universes apart. A godly entity has to do with the creator. Yeah?
Sorry. So then the spiritual, like what we don't see, they cannot become godly. They cannot become godly when they are there. We can only become more godly when we are in the spiritual world, right? Or no? Like with our actions. So is that we can do godly acts through our actions, but then the spirit, in the spiritual, I mean, what we cannot see, they cannot do that. They cannot do things, right?
So let's get practical. When you do a mitzvah, you give tzedakah. You put a few coins in a charity box. That's godliness expressed in the physical. The compassion you're feeling for the poor people to whom you're giving the money, that compassion is spiritual. But when your compassion moves you to do what God wants you to do, now your spiritual has become godly. So the physical act is the act of a mitzvah. The kavanah, your intention, your motivation, your love or fear of God that makes you want to do the mitzvah, that's your spiritual. Both of them can become godly.
Thank you. What is the Spirit of God? Can the Spirit of God dwell in humans? Is there something called spiritual battle?
Right. So the Spirit of God is what God describes about himself. I despise evil. I love the righteous. That's spirit. Love, hate, pleasure. When God says the mitzvah gives me pleasure, the pleasure is the spiritual. The fact that it's God's pleasure, that's godly. So we share many spiritual functions with God. God is compassionate, we're compassionate. God is kind, we are kind. God is knowing, we are knowing. Of course, to a much lesser degree. But that's how we can imitate God, which we should. To make a long story short, this couple, childless couple, came to the Baal Shem Tov every year begging for a blessing that they should have children. And every year the Baal Shem Tov changed the subject, would not give them a blessing. Finally, they were getting a little older and they were getting desperate, and they really would not take no for an answer, and they pleaded and begged and cried, and the Baal Shem Tov gave them a blessing that they should have a child. A child was born to them that year, beautiful, incredible, wonderful child. The child lived to be 2 years old, and after his second birthday, he passed away. The couple, very distraught, came to the Baal Shem Tov and asked, "What did we do wrong? Why are we being punished?" The Baal Shem Tov told them that this soul was the soul of a very special person who had lived a very virtuous life, except that the first 2 years of his childhood, he was exposed to very unholy things. He had been kidnapped by the Cossacks. Make a long story short, when his soul came back to heaven, it was decreed that he has to relive the first 2 years of his life in a holy environment. When the Baal Shem Tov said, "When you came and asked me for a blessing for children, I didn't want to give you the blessing because I knew that you would have this child. But when you insisted, I gave you the blessing. But you didn't do anything wrong at all. On the contrary, you were chosen to be the holy environment in which this soul can relive the first 2 years of its life. That's all it needed, that's all it came for, and you're perfect for the soul." I heard this story when I was a child, and it explains so many things. But the Rebbe once told the story in public, and he added a significant little detail. The Baal Shem Tov was not allowed to share that information. The tzaddikim are not allowed to reveal what they know from heaven. So in revealing it, in telling this couple, in telling them what that soul was and why it came and what happened, the Baal Shem Tov had to pay a price for that. He was punished for that. It's a violation. You do not reveal secrets from heaven. And yet the Baal Shem Tov did, because he couldn't stand to see the couple in pain. So he revealed the secrets to help them feel better, knowing that he would have to pay a price for it. And that's really what makes the Baal Shem Tov a great person. Not the fact that he knew, but the fact that he was willing to take the bullet for this couple. Now that's called going beyond the letter of the law.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
Can that mean that everybody can find peace for family member he lost earlier than thought? There's okay, that was a mission and now it was done, and it's nobody's fault. It's maybe a good thing because it was a so godly soul. She or he just needed to live 30 more years to accomplish something, to get a mother or to marry or...
Yes, parents must never assume that a child suffered or, God forbid, died because something the parents did wrong. That is never true. Every soul has its own destiny, and parents, even parents, cannot mess up a soul's destiny and mission. So when the couple came and said, what did we do wrong? The Baal Shem Tov had to straighten that out. That assumption is totally off. You're not God, and you cannot interfere with another soul's destiny, not even the soul of your own children. So on the one hand, it takes the guilt away, which is very important. On the other hand, it gives you a whole new respect for your children. Yes, you gave birth to them, but they have their own relationship with God. They have their own destiny. They have their own mission in which you cannot and may not interfere.
So we can also say that a loved one who passes away will never be a punishment for someone, but is in regards with their own mission and their own purpose or meaning.
Absolutely. So if parents would say, I know it's not my fault, but why was I chosen for this painful mission? That's a different question. Usually the answer is because you were qualified, because you had exactly the talents necessary.
Rabbi, on that note, can I ask a question about, it's kind of practical in that sense, but maybe a little bit reverse in terms of personal things that are happening for me in my life. But I'm helping my mom quite a lot take care of my grandparents, and they're elderly. And when it comes to dementia, and just my grandma loves through worry, very much so. So every time I visit and go over there, it's a constant, I know it's out of love, and I know my grandpa can't help his mind at this moment, but everything inside of me, right? The pain, of watching that occur, and then how much weight my grandma puts on me, the constant worry that everything is going to go wrong and that my life is, and she's always, it's never like, nothing's ever safe in her world. And so for me to step into her world means that I have to, every time I constantly go in there, have my guard up, and at the same time trying to express that unconditional love and not add fear to fear, right? And frustration to frustration. How do we practically do these things?
Well, the most important practical thing is don't forget to be respectful. In other words, don't stop admiring. There's always more to admire. Love, it's hard to love what's going on. It's hard to love what you're seeing. So don't focus on the love. Focus on the admiration. An incredible life, incredible accomplishments. Even this they're handling very well. They just don't know it. So don't lose respect. Focus on the respect. That's the main, they may be senile, they may be dysfunctional, but they're way ahead of you. So don't start looking down at them. Look up.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, Rabbi, the story of the Baal Shem Tov, that I never heard the Rebbe's point, they obviously added to me a lot. I'd never heard it before. So how does it connect to, everything we talked about before, the spiritual? It was so important to me. And for the first time, everybody called me in that time. So I missed so many sentences. I don't know, I'm going to have to work it out later on. But then I wanted, what's the connection to this story? Why did you give it as an example? To spiritual and the world, because I didn't understand it. I did the first time ever. I didn't understand what.
It shows that in the spiritual there are rules. There's a structure. It's not a free for all. It's part of creation, and creation means a structured, disciplined, finite function that serves God's purpose in some way. So a tzaddik knows everything, right? So he can tell you what's going on. No, there are certain rules. You can't, it's not a free-for-all. Like one time, a boy in our dormitory, 16 years old, he passed away very suddenly. This was on a Wednesday, for Shabbos, 4 days later, there was a Farbrengen, and the Rebbe said to the father of this boy, he's already in Gan Eden. And everybody thought, oh, that is so nice to know. Why did the Rebbe pay for that? And he said it so casually. He had to pay a price for that. You can't just reveal stuff. So that was the real greatness of these saintly people who told us things about heaven, not in learning, in fact. This is happening, that's happening, this is... Every time they did that, it cost them. They paid a price. Many times the Rebbe said, I was told something in confidence by my father-in-law, but he knew I would tell it sooner or later, so he won't be surprised. He knew me. He knew I would always share everything I know. So he took the risk of saying things that were told to him in confidence.
Why can't we know this stuff? Why is it not allowed?
Well, part of the challenge, I guess, like, what exactly is my soul doing in this world, in this life, compared to a past life? What am I doing? Why don't I know? Because I'm not supposed to know. For whatever reason. But the fact is, God gives us a mission, and he doesn't tell us what it is. So you have to do it all. Because you never know which mitzvah is your mission. So you have to treat every mitzvah as if your life depends on it. But whatever it is, we're intentionally not told. So when the tzaddik does reveal these things, he does it at his own risk, at his own peril. So he figures, okay, I'll pay the price, but it'll help a father get over his grief.
And what can be the price?
I have no idea. I don't know.
So based on whatever just have said, I think the response to these spiritual things, including negative ones or beings and energies, we just ignore that and live our life as usual. A good example is in the book of Job. I guess Job did not know when those terrible things happened that it was God who initiated the negative energy to him, right? So we just ignore whatever is going on in the spiritual world and being negative. Is that correct?
The ultimate question in every issue is, what's the godly purpose? If there's a godly purpose to demons, then let's do it. Bring it on. If there's no godly purpose, then I'm not interested.
Rabbi, does the dimension of time exist in heaven? Or is there no such thing as time? Because I know we talk about like 11 months of saying Kaddish, meaning that they are in a place for a certain period of time. And the second question, so time is question one. The other question was, would you say that the transition from, the transition of birth into earth, into this world, or the transition from this world to heaven is more of a shift or, traumatic?
No, it's definitely traumatic. And it's just a shift from one part of creation to another. The soul goes to heaven. It doesn't become God. It doesn't become an angel either, because it's already greater than an angel. But heaven and earth are two parts of creation. So when a soul goes from earth to heaven, it's simply a shift from one creation to another. The reward in heaven, where God answers all your questions, that's godly.
But in terms of time, does time exist there? And what are you doing up there, floating around?
Yeah, there is a metaphysical form of time. Because in the physical, time means before and after. That's time. If nothing ever changes, then there's no time. Time means before, after, past, present, present, future. In the spiritual, time is measured by virtue, greater virtue, lesser virtue. It's not a matter of before and after. It's higher and lower. So, for example, in God's attributes, right, there is the Chochmah Bina Das, God's wisdom, and then there are God's emotions, his kindness, his judgment, his compassion. Which is higher? The intelligence is higher than the emotions. Which one came first? Not in God. In God, there isn't before and after. They were all there at the same time. And yet, intellect is higher than emotion. So on a spiritual level, that's considered time. It's like you're going from one level to another. It doesn't take time to go from one level to another. But the fact that this is a higher level and this is a lower level is somewhat similar to before and after. But there is no spiritual form of space. So you can't really ask, where is your soul? You can only ask, what is your soul experiencing? Where? There's no space. Thoughts have no space. We can be on opposite sides of the world, and when I think about you, you feel it, if you're sensitive. Because space makes no difference to thought. To speech, it makes a difference. My voice can only carry so far. Bradford, yes.
Could you speak a little about the concept of being connected, like entangled even? Like you just gave an example of thinking something on one side of the world and it's immediately registers on the opposite side. You know, that's impossible to go faster than the speed of light, except if there's an entanglement. You know, spooky action at a distance is what Einstein described it, and he really had a hard time believing it, but it's proven that two entangled particles, you do something to one and immediately, no matter how far away it is, it affects the other one. And just, you know, the concept of being connected.
Well, what Einstein was saying, and I think he's right, the thought that planet Earth, for example, is a huge magnet, and gravity is the pull of that magnet. So the gravity of Earth pulls the moon, and that keeps it from floating off into outer space. So Einstein said that's ridiculous. There's no such reach. He was probably right. But when one particle affects another particle, it is not traveling faster than the speed of light. It's not traveling. It's not going from one place to another. It is placeless, like something that is timeless.
Mm-hmm.
So light is not timeless. If it goes from the moon to the earth, It's traveling a long distance, and that's going to take time.
Mhm.
So that depends on the speed of the velocity of the object. How fast are you traveling? Can anything travel faster than light? I don't know. But even if it's faster, it's still traveling. It's going to take some time. But then there are those things that are timeless. In other words, my thought when I think about you, even though you're way out there in Texas, like even from one side of Texas to the other is a pretty big distance. So when somebody is thinking about you, it's not my thought travels very, very, very fast and gets to Texas in seconds. It's not traveling. Thought doesn't have to travel from where I am to where you are. It's timeless. It's spaceless. In other words, it's everywhere already. I just have to focus it on you.
It's a connection.
Which already exists.
Yeah.
It's an existing condition. And that's why it takes no time, not even faster than the speed of light.
Rabbi, as we touched the topic of space, I was always curious whether in scripture or maybe in, I don't know, Kabbalah is written anything about creatures living outside of our planet. And in Genesis, when it says that God created heaven and earth, does this mean that he created our planet, or he created all the planets and where the life is possible? I mean, and plus like the animal world, the plants and so forth. So does this mean that he created only for our planet, or he did it in multiple planets? And so follow up on this. So does it make sense to look for life in the outer space?
Well, whether it makes sense to look for them or to not look for them, that's a different question. But there is life on other planets. In fact, it's written in Lamentations that when they destroyed the temple, God was angry at the inhabitants of other planets who did not come to help save the temple.
Wow.
Now, what kind of life exists in other planets? I don't know. Little green people? I don't think so. It's a different life form. Not different by color or size. It's a different life form. Are they intelligent? You know, are they looking for us? I don't think so. Only we're silly enough to go looking for them. They're minding their own business, and we should mind our own business. But in the first words of creation in the Torah, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Why the heaven? Why not just heaven? That implies heaven and everything in it. The earth means earth and everything on it. So heaven is not just some empty space. Heaven means all the celestial bodies, all the planets, all the stars, all the galaxies, all of that is part of heaven, creation of heaven. Now God says, on the third day of creation, God says, let the earth give forth vegetation. Only earth. God was being very specific. He created heaven and earth, but he commanded that earth produce vegetation, not heaven. So you're not going to find any grass on Mars. So earth is unique, obviously. because of the way God describes it. I created heaven and earth. So, well, earth is just another planet. No. No, earth is different. Because after creating heaven and earth, God puts all his attention on the earth, not on the heaven. So, to put it very succinctly, a scientist back in the 60s said to the Rebbe, "We don't believe in life on other planets, do we?" And the Rebbe said, "Believe? We don't believe? You're a scientist. Go take a look. Don't sit here and decide what you believe about other planets. You're a scientist. Check it out. And if you're going to make assumptions, this is the crucial point, if you're going to make assumptions, why would you assume less of God's creation when you can assume more? Why assume that there is less in God's creation when you could assume that there is more to God's creation? So no, don't assume that there is no life. Assume there is. Assume there is much more to the universe than we ever even imagined. So to say, nah, there's no life on other planets. What are you, in a bad mood or something? What's your problem? Anyway, people, I must run. Thank you so much. This is such a breath of fresh air.
This was really
Joseph.
nice today. There's a lot of topics that I like.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.